I will now introduce lesson 45 in Ross. 45.1 Repetition. Common feature of Hebrew rhetoric is repetition, whether repetition of consonants in words, repetition of words in sentence, or repetition of entire clauses or phrases in a narrative. At risk of oversimplifying the matter, we may say that repetition carries some emphasis by calling attention to itself. And so he gives you an example from the Sodom and Gomorrah narrative in Genesis 14:10. V'emek ha-sidim be'erot chimar. And that means now the valley of Siddim was pitted. This is a word for pit, ba'er in the plural, was pitted, and then you have a phrase, pits of bitumen. So the valley of Siddim was pitted with pits of bitumen. And so you repeat that same be'erot as a part of that idiom. And you have in Isaiah 6 and verse 3, Ve'kara ze el ze, and called out this one to that one. You have ze and ze repeated here. Ve'amar, and he said, Kadosh, 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 Adonai Savaot. Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts. So again, in this case, you repeat the ze, and that's an idiom. Ze el ze is this one to that one. But then the Kadosh, Kadosh, Kadosh is a way of emphasizing how holy God is. God is very, very holy. Christians have often seen that verse also as a hint of the Trinity. Note, by the way, that the textbook misspells Adonai here. 45.2 Parallelism. A common form of repetition is the paralleling of similar synonyms or contrasting thoughts in successive lines of poetry. Hebrew parallelism appears in many variations with different emphases. It's sufficient at this stage to gain an awareness of its regular use in the literature. So, Vayivra Adonai et ha'adam be'salmo, and created God mankind in his image. B'zelem Elohim bara oto, in the image of God he created him. Zakar ve'zakuva bara otam, male and female he created them. And clearly there's a parallel with God creating, an image of God being repeated, and three different times it uses the verb to create. You also have an example of it in Genesis 3:15. This is famous verse because it's arguably the first messianic prophecy in the Old Testament. Ve'evav ashit beinka ubein ha'isha, enmity I will place between you and between, talking to the servant, and between the woman, and we don't repeat that word between in English, between you and the woman. And then the next parallel line, uvein zar akah, between your seed, uvein zar and her seed. And then again, that's parallel with the between clauses. And then ve shufak rosh, he will bruise you with regard to the head. He will bruise your head. Ve ata, and as for you, te shupenu, you will strike him a cave on the heel. The imagery of a man stepping on a snake and the snake coiling around to bite the heel of the man stepping on him. Well, anyway, you can see that there's again repetition with the between clauses, and then the contrast, he will bruise you and you will also do damage to him. Same verb, but I would probably, he'll strike you on the head, you'll strike him on the heel. I could do it that way and make the verb shuf translated the same way both times. Another thing to notice is chiastic parallelism. That's where you have an ABBA type pattern, or it could be an ABC, CBA type pattern. And arguably you get some of that in Genesis 1:27. Vayivra Elohim et Adam barzar mo, and God created mankind in his image. And then it goes backwards, but B'Tselem, in the image, and then Elohim, so you had image here, then you have Elohim there in the image of God, bara, going back to bara, so A, B, C, B, A type pattern in this particular chiasm. And you have another one with Abram. Ve yashev et kol harkush, vegan et lot achiv, ul kusho heshiv. By the way, there's a typo here as well. There's an inappropriate gap in that word. Well, anyway, that reads, and he, talking about Abram, brought back a Hiphial form of Shuv, brought back all the possessions, meaning all his possessions, and also Lot, his relative, and his possessions he brought back. So it begins with the Hiphial of Shuv, it ends with the Hiphial of Shuv. It talks about possessions, and then it talks about possessions, so you get an A, B, B, A, chiastic parallelism pattern. Section 45.4. The normal rule is that the subject and the predicate are to follow the usual rules of grammar and correspond in gender and number. And in typical Hebrew constructions, that's what you'll see. So here you have an expression, the king of Sodom and Gomorrah fled, nusu melech Sodom ve Amorah. Well, here they have the king of Sodom and implied the king of Gomorrah. The king of Sodom and Gomorrah, that makes the subject plural. The verb has an u ending, that's a plural ending. Or my people, am is a noun in the singular, there is a plural form, peoples. Gala ami, my people have gone into exile. And again, the verb is a third masculine singular going along with am, which is a third masculine singular form. However, these rules are sometimes thrown out the window. Sometimes when the subject stands first and is clearly identified as such by the author, the feminine subject may have a masculine verb. And so here you have avla lo nimsa. Avla is evil, is the feminine noun. You can see the kamatse ending. But then it has a third masculine singular nifal form. Evil was not found. Or when the predicate stands first and is fixed in the reader's mind, the writer often uses the most general form, the masculine singular. And so here you have ve ana iyim, and answered or howled iyim, wolves. And wolves will howl, but again, wolves is a plural, ana is a masculine singular. Masculine plural forms frequently are substituted for feminine plural forms. And so here it talks about Nashav, his wives, and then you have Nata, the hiphil form, to turn. His wives turned his heart, talking about Solomon. And the word wives is clearly feminine, but the grammatical subject here is the third masculine plural form. With a compound subject, the verb may be singular in agreement with the closest word. And so here you have an example. Vayetze melech Sodom umelech Amorah. And it's translated, the king of Sodom went forth. And then this and could be thought of along with the king of Gomorrah and the king of Admah and the king of Zavorim and the king of Bela. And so again, the subject is third masculine singular going along with the first one, but then he thinks about adding all the other names, and it doesn't change the subject, even though grammatically one would expect it to. Collectives can be treated as singular, but can also be treated as plural. So ha'am ha'holakim b'hoshek, and the people walking in darkness. Now, people is a masculine singular form, but if you think of people as a bunch of individuals that collectively make a people, well, you can justify having a plural participle being the subject of that. Am will go both ways. Sometimes it's treated as a collective singular and it'll have singular verbs and adjectives. Sometimes it's treated as a plural. When you have a plural of majesty or respect, when you have a plural form with a singular sense, that will typically take singular verbs. So in Genesis 1:1, Bereshit bara Elohim. Elohim, even though it's plural in form, it's singular in meaning when it's referring to the one true God. And the verb reflects that. God created, Elohim created, even though the form is plural. There are a few exceptions to that. In Exodus 32:1, you'll have Elohim in the sense of Yahweh treated as a plural, but usually it'll be treated as a singular. And there are other plural collectives that could be treated that way too. And then with a genitive modifier, the predicate sometimes agrees with the genitive rather than with the construct. So here you have Keshet Giborim Chatim, the bow of the mighty men or the warriors, Chatim, is broken. Well, it's not that the warriors are broken, it's the bow is broken. But again, Cheshet bow is collective for all the various bows, and therefore it could be treated as a plural collective. Well, that's the grammar part of lesson 45, and we will stop here.